Hello, everyone, and welcome to Squeezing the Juice, the live stream. This is our very first live streamed episode of Squeezing the Juice, the podcast. So for those of you unfamiliar with the regular podcast, please do find us and follow us on Spotify or your chosen podcast platform. We cover in our episodes all manner of XR and emerging tech and immersive technology applications. So for those of you who are curious about this world, or indeed already an adopter of XR tech, it's a good watch and listen. Join the tribe. It'd be great to see you on our next episode. So we've called today a live stream. It's actually, for those of you who have joined us, an invite only. You're our special guests for this inaugural episode. But obviously, from our point of view, it's great to be able to welcome you into the Squeezing the Juice world, which is normally a one-to-one conversation. So thank you very much for joining us. What we'd like to do is make today's session as kind of interactive as possible, whereby you can use the chat mechanism. So it should just be the live stream chat in your Riverside view. And if you drop any questions or comments or views into that chat, we'll do our best during the session to track those and to use them to inform the direction we take the conversation in. And if we have some time at the end, which I'm sure we will, we'll do a bit of a Q&A mop-up where any questions we haven't covered off we'll get to and we'll talk to. Okay, so thank you again for joining us. If you're here today, you share a real interest in today's topic, which is entitled From Training Challenges to XR Solutions, Adopting Tech That Works for Learners and Delivers ROI, Return on Investment. So whether you're already adopting or experimenting with immersive technology, whether you're skeptical but open-minded, or you're just XR curious, you're in the right place, and hopefully the next 40 to 60 minutes or so will deliver you a lot of value. So let's get to it. The format for today is as follows. Shortly, I'm going to introduce a colleague of mine from the team at Juice Immersive. That's Ian Ravenscroft, our XR strategy lead. And Ian and myself will just have a short context setting conversation around XR in training. And we'll talk to some of the challenges that training world seems to have from the trends and the conversations we have with a varying array of clients. And then shortly after that, we'll bring a special guest into the conversation as well. So it'll become more of a three-way panel discussion. And I'll introduce that guest as we get to that point in the show. So yeah, feel free to use the chat, get those questions in as we go. And Ian and I will do our best, as will the team behind the scenes, to track those and bring them into the conversation. Okay, so without any further delay, let me introduce Ian Ravenscroft, our XR strategy lead at Juice Immersive. Ian, join me in the studio, as if by magic.
Hi, Owen.
Hi, mate.
Great to
You
be
okay?
here. Yeah, I'm good.
Good, excellent. Ian, some of our guests will probably know you already through interactions with Juice, others may not at all. So just if you could give us a brief introduction to yourself and what it is you do.
Yeah, sure. So I'm XR strategy lead at Juice, and briefly what that entails is designing XR projects with our clients, but also helping clients to roadmap their XR adoption. So a lot of it is listening and synthesizing challenges down into projects that can be delivered. Just a bit of background on me. So I come from a creative production and development background. Probably most notably, I worked in content innovation at the BBC, where I got my first introduction to XR, doing my first XR projects about 10 years ago. And since then, I've produced immersive VR, AR projects for a variety of people, including the BFI and lots of festivals. So but now very much in the enterprise space, and it's a really exciting time.
Good stuff. Thank you for that. And yeah, you've kind of prompted me to presume nothing in terms of our audience's understanding of what XR is. So do you mind just in terms of the topic today, just talk us through what we mean when we say XR?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even people within our industry get confused with the term XR. So it's nothing to be ashamed of. But XR for us means the whole gamut of technologies that could be termed extended reality or immersive technologies. So that might be virtual reality through a headset. It might be augmented reality through a phone or a tablet. It might be just the underlying technologies that are part of it. Maybe it's 3D mapping, or it's immersive spaces. There's a whole range of technologies that encompasses. But generally, they're anything beyond flat video or audio or text. It's something that's more interactive and more in that immersive space.
Good stuff. Thanks, Ian. It's important to note, I think, that at Juice we work across a really broad range of technologies and use cases and purposes. So training forms just one part of that. But do you mind just giving a bit of insight to people watching and listening as to some of the trends and some of the challenges we're hearing from clients who we work with, particularly in a training context?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the reason we get interested in training and why we talk to people that provide training is often they're looking to engage either a large number of employees, so either for onboarding or for continuous learning, and they need to keep it fresh. They need to do something different with it. Also need to engage people with a huge amount of material. So we often hear the phrase "death by PowerPoint" as a quite kind of key phrase that comes back to us. And we talk to learners, and even in the sphere of maybe classroom learning, there's a desire to mix things up. So it's not just staring at a screen, staring at a projection for days on end, or even watching tons of videos over 2 weeks. It's actually getting involved, getting interactive, being able to break out of sessions. So there's a desire to mix things up with training. We're also getting a lot of interest in training remote teams as well. If your teams are spread across a large geographical area, or we have international teams, suddenly you can standardize your training a bit more with XR, something that can be sent and experienced in a headset or in a projected space, rather than having to do the tour or get everyone down to your central location. There are new ways to scale that training.
Stuff, yeah. And I think the other key question for context, I suppose, for people who perhaps are more XR curious than they are kind of bought in, what do we see as those headline benefits to using and leveraging XR technology in a training context?
Yeah, so I think in terms of the kind of regular or the traditional use of immersive training that we've seen over the last few years, it's things like putting people into environments that you can't easily access. So it might be a hazardous environment, for example, and training in those sort of scenarios that are hard to replicate in real life. XR and particularly VR in that instance would be a really good alternative. It means that you can get people familiar with situations that are hard to simulate in a physical sense. So there's that. Also, just in terms of collaboration, so working with team members, getting people to break out of individual learning and interact with their colleagues, build team working as well as part of training. And familiarization generally. So, using things like 360 video, which we do a lot of, which is where you can easily and quite quickly get representations of real world spaces and put people into them. So there's a whole range of kind of benefits. But yeah, interactivity, collaboration, and sort of retention of that knowledge, because it feels like you're remembering a thing that you've actually done rather than just been told about.
Yeah, that's key, isn't it? Absolutely. Great. And personally, and what excites you in particular about XR in training? And what is it that we want to see, do you think, in the years to come?
Yeah, I think the two things that are really exciting me at the moment are so more collaborative. So I touched on it briefly, but collaborative VR. So the way technology is developing with particularly with the headsets that are available now, but also the technologies that support that in terms of the production of content and the sort of tracking solutions, is you can collaborate with colleagues in a shared virtual space, even if you're in the same room, and actually immerse yourself and work together. Previously, VR was quite a kind of a solo experience, but actually now with the free roam multi-user VR that we're seeing, we've got technology that does that, that allows you to work with your colleagues, and it's just another element that wasn't previously available but now is. And in a similar vein, immersive spaces as well, like hybrid approaches to XR, where maybe you're in a physical room or a physical space, maybe you've got a training facility or a classroom, and it's now being decked out with some kit or some content that you can break out from a classroom session. You can go and view some 360 video and then discuss it as a group. And I think those hybrid approaches, I think I'm more excited about those than the wholesale, let's do all of our training in this one technology. I think it's really, which is a valid way of doing it, but I think it's good to have that mix, and that's what I'm excited about personally.
Yeah, it's always, I think, good when there's a blend of technologies being applied, and it gives often a nicely balanced experience for the learner. Just in terms of what we are hearing from clients that we're working with, it's interesting, isn't it? Sometimes, the motivating factor for even opening up the conversation or reaching out, it can be vastly different. It might be we have a space and we don't know what to do with it now. We feel we should be repurposing it, through to we've gone all in on some end of year budget on some VR headsets, but now we're wondering what we could create and do with those. So yeah, maybe just talk through some of those stepping off points, I guess, that we experience in this regard.
Yeah, so I think that's interesting. You mentioned about like a space and we don't know what to do with it. That's becoming more of a thing, I think, since remote working, where people maybe they have premises or they have bases, across the country, or even an international basis, and they think, well, we've got these rooms. It's brilliant to bring our colleagues together. Obviously, some of the magic happens when you actually meet your people face to face. But having a reason to bring people together is actually not the easiest thing to do sometimes. So we hear from clients that they think, well, we'd like to bring people together. We know there's value in congregating. Actually, some of this technology is a really good way to bring people together and give them some value when they get there. So actually coming to do some training that's really interactive, really fun, kind of future facing as well. But plus the benefits of being there in person. So there's definitely that space element that keeps coming up. And then the other side is really we've kind of always done things a certain way. We hear this a lot. It's like, well, we've always done our training this way. We're quite far down the road. It's all on PowerPoint. It's all in this one format. It feels like a big challenge to translate that all into something new. And I think a lot of the conversations we're having are, how can we start? How can we start the journey? And often it's to target something quite small, or very kind of in isolation, to test it and give it a go. Not all of your training will be suited to XR, and not all of XR will be suited to your training, but it's a good place to start to experiment. And I think maybe that's a barrier as well of where do we start with all of this.
Great, yeah, and we'll get into that in a bit more detail shortly, I think, when Helen joins us as well. Apologies for any background noise, by the way. Our neighbours on the Albert Dock seem to be taking the opportunity to perhaps repurpose a space, who knows, next door. But hopefully it's not too intrusive. So yeah, okay, Ian, I think just finally, I'm just keeping an eye on the chat. I think everyone's either very quiet or I'm on the wrong chat, but I don't think so. So please feel free to drop questions in, anything related to what you've heard so far, or indeed the subsequent panel. But yeah, just finally, Ian, before we bring Helen in to join us in the studio, what would you say at the moment is the kind of pervading attitude towards XR in the training world?
I think that so we're getting a lot of people that are saying to us, we know we should be doing something in this. We know we want to be doing something, but the technology moves quite quickly. So it feels like it's a difficult thing to maybe plan budgets for. It's maybe a difficult thing to really kind of scope and hone down into. And I think what we're finding is that I think the attitude is, we need help. We need support to develop this. We need to have a longer term plan that kind of integrates with the wider training benefits that are there. But also I think the thing that we're hearing a lot is that, what are the benefits to general operations, not just training, but what does doing this training in this way actually have in terms of a benefit to your business or to your customers, or sort of down the road in terms of efficiency savings. And it's understanding that business case that I think we are talking a lot about, and that's kind of a different side to the XR challenge that we see. But yeah, general sense is that the technology is getting to a place where people have got it in their homes a lot more. They're experiencing it with their families using it, maybe for gaming. We're getting a lot of devices that are much more readily available, in your pocket, in terms of the ability through your phone to do XR content. So the understanding's there, but actually applying it into an enterprise setting is another set of challenges that requires a specific approach, and maybe a different approach to getting something off the shelf. And in your usual procurement process, it's slightly different.
Good stuff. Yeah, thanks, Ian. And yeah, just if anyone missed the news, the VR headset sales are now being used to measure inflation in the UK. That's not a late April Fool's. If you're wondering, that is actually a thing. Okay, I'm going to now bring Helen into the conversation, I think. I'd like to introduce to everyone Helen Welsh. Helen is media and VR producer at Maudsley Learning, and they deliver mental health education and training for all. So, Helen, join us in the studio if you will.
Hello, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for your time and for joining us.
No worries.
As I asked Ian to do, really, Helen, would you mind just giving us a bit of a brief introduction to yourself, your kind of experience, your journey to where you are today and what you do today?
Yeah, of course. So my background is in healthcare. I started my career in nursing and then moved over naturally, as you do, into television. I sort of always wanted to do creative stuff. I enjoy like filmmaking and script writing. So I moved over into TV, did a lot of welfare stuff and casting and like producer director type roles. And then sort of wanted to get that balance between looking after people and like making a difference in the world, which you get in healthcare, but also doing something creative. So I moved into this role in the NHS and from there have built sort of the virtual reality department at Maudsley Learning in South London and Maudsley a lot more. So they had like a camera and like a lot of places they had like headsets, but they didn't really know what to do with them. Or we tried a lot of stuff like in the initial stages, and I sort of tried to bring that TV background and that like high quality TV level stuff to sort of education training sector. And yeah, just experimented with different things when it comes to virtual reality, and now have built like a whole training program, a champions program, where we sort of produce all the content and then have a pathway into delivery of the content in situ, or people can have that remotely or in person with workshops and things, which has been really successful.
Fantastic, thank you. So you've definitely been on a journey, I'm sure, for want of a less cliched phrase. What I'd like to do though is just quickly ask you to think back to your time in nursing, because I think that's massively relevant. So when are we talking, and what do you remember what your training looked like when you were in that?
There was I think a simulation mannequin, because I like that was the only thing that we used at the time, was a simulation mannequin, and obviously like the CPR, Resusci Annie type things, but I didn't have access to anything else. And the mannequin was very old fashioned. A lot of the training was like you have like it's like hands-on training, but I never really got to like you do it once and you don't really get to practice and practice and practice, which is sort of what I've come to learn with VR is super useful. You can practice it as many times in that safe space. So yeah, a lot of my training in nursing was sort of very basic when it comes to like technology side, or like the biggest thing we had was the simulation mannequin, which is sadly very old, but still useful.
Absolutely. And I think that's part of the point, isn't it? That actually there is always in that context going to be value in that particular hands-on type of training for CPR, for example. But it's how we can leverage these types of technologies to supplement, enhance, and often improve, I think, that overall delivery. Great. So talk us through, if you will, that journey you've been on with Maudsley and in the NHS generally, because it strikes me that if you can achieve change in an organisation like the NHS, I think you can probably do it anywhere. But tell me about your experience.
Yeah, so we started. We would like make like de-escalation content and mental health content in using our virtual reality 360 camera. We started with a very, very old 360 camera with 2 lenses, and we've like progressed now to the Insta360 with like 6 or 8 lenses, which is like 4K or 8K. And we sort of had like really, really old headsets, like the NHS, even like getting headsets into the NHS was a whole battle. Like we'd start with the cardboard headsets that you get with, you'd slip your phone into them because that was so much easier to get around any IT or infrastructure problems or not having access to Wi-Fi. You can just use your phone. And And now we've sort of built like, there's a lot of like red tape when it comes to like even what headset you choose, and some that can be overwhelming for people to even decide what headset to go with in the first place. So we had a look at what was on the market, Meta, obviously HTC and Pico being like the three we had to choose from. And like as things have gone on, we've seen like this growth within even eye tracking. For us, that's been super important in like getting that end result with learners and being able to sort of have like a repeatability of the content. Eye tracking has been massive, even for our research into virtual reality and the effect that it has on learners. But we've like partnered with different like organisations to sort of even be able to get funding has been a real struggle at times, but thankfully there is opportunities out there to secure funding for headsets or to secure funding for like the production side of things. And yeah, we've sort of built it from the ground up. In terms, we've made a lot of like mistakes, even like we've seen what mistakes other people have made. Like the position of the camera, for example, is huge when it comes to the power of how immersive that content can be, and even the height of the camera. So that, I guess, is sort of our journey. We started with very basic equipment and sort of trial and errored it, and come all the way up to like, I guess, the high-end equipment on the market. Obviously it's a benefit that my organisation has me, because there isn't another me in the NHS, but
You're unique in
yes,
the NHS.
Yes.
Fantastic. I want to come back to subsequent kind of impact of what you've managed to implement at Maudsley. But just before I do, we've had a question. Yes, thank you, Taz. Great to have you with us. So Taz asks, how can we better define maybe between the need for XR and the want for XR in the training space? I think what Taz is alluding to there is actually it's still relatively new and shiny for a lot of organizations, and there's certainly an appetite and a want, but how do we define that need? And that's open to you as well, Ian, if you want to chip in on this.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in first just because I've got a very clear example in my mind. But yeah, I think in terms of sort of need and want, I mean, need is really my focus generally, and it's trying to find that need that is really important. And usually the things that I look for are where can you drive efficiency and where can you put a number against something. So, if it's a percentage that you save in terms of time that someone needs training, or even as Helen mentioned earlier, how can you improve contact time with training by a certain percentage? So if you've got a current training program where you get, say, 2 weeks of training, how can you potentially double that with access to a headset where you can go and do that training again? So it's those kind of metrics that I think are really useful for establishing a need and a business case, rather than just a want because it's exciting and it's fun. For me, it's much more about need and actually establishing those kind of ROI, but really metrics for impact is what I find is most important.
Great. And for you, Helen, obviously, I think by virtue of your appointment in the first place, there was obviously a serious appetite and commitment on behalf of the NHS and Maudsley in particular. But yeah, can you talk us through sort of those early days of it, and maybe what some of those barriers were to bringing it in?
Yeah, I think what the NHS has sort of struggled with is they have this excitement for new technology, and quite often people will buy a lot of headsets and then not really know what to do with them. So they'll buy in and be swept up in the want to do something, and then not have like Ian was saying, that clear reason or that clear strategy for how to like implement something that has like long lasting training effects for everyone. So for us, I think we had a look at pre-existing courses within the NHS that were doing really well, but maybe we have a lot of in-person courses that are so oversubscribed, people on waiting lists for a long time to be able to take part in this training. And how can we disseminate that training still to that high quality faster, Can we train up people in situ to deliver the training so more people are getting access? And that's what like virtual reality is and XR has given to us as an organisation. There's always going to be people within any organisation that have that desire, and that's so helpful to like to tap into people who have that want to make it work, because that you've got the buy-in then from somebody. But finding that sort of like Ian was saying, that specific need that will help with long-lasting training, that repeatability, something that like can be rolled out like at pace. Really, you can have months and months and months of content that people can go back to, and that content can people. I think my experience is that our learners, they come and they're skeptic. Nurses, doctors, they don't really want to be at training for too long. And what we're seeing is people come to the training and genuinely get so much out of it that they voluntarily come back to try the training again. We've had people that have had a waiting list even for the VR training that we've delivered, which is so exciting for us as an organisation, and it means that buy-in from almost like the harder sell people who maybe like different age groups who are maybe worried about technology or barriers sort of don't have that fear with this anymore, which is so exciting.
Good stuff. I think, yeah, what's really interesting is that often we, as an industry, the Royal we get asked about ROI and how will we measure impact? How will we measure the cost savings or the efficiency savings? And often I like to kind of flip that question around and say, how are you measuring the impact and effectiveness of your training at the moment? And that's the answer there is obviously depending on who we're speaking to. But for example, the very first VR training piece that Juice did was a pilot piece of work that's public domain, so I can talk about it. It was for Northern Power Grid, and it was around driver training. And the particular pain point, the most acute pain point that business had at the time was slow speed vehicle accidents, so preventable vehicle accidents. And so we worked with them to devise a pilot training project around drivers doing their circle of inspection of their vehicle before getting in it and driving away, which is the thing that they already had training on. And yet their biggest pain point was the volume of preventable vehicle accidents they were having. So I suppose for me, and to Taz's question about need, I always like to just ask that question: how effective is your current form of training? And then we can maybe start looking at how much improvement we might be able to bring, and how much cut through and impact and knowledge retention we might be able to bring with immersive tech at play. Does that sort of resonate with either of yourselves?
Yeah, I mean, definitely from my point of view, I think it's training is an interesting one. Sometimes it's a necessary evil in some companies, where sometimes it's absolutely like a real big focus. And I think that, kind of the appetite will vary. I think most training departments and learning teams that we speak to are really passionate about training, and they're really passionate about doing it really well, and they're passionate about engaging their learners. So most of the time it's not a problem. There are some companies out there who might want to tick box it, but in our experience, the better experience they can give to their learners is the more they can promote themselves on it. They can say we're an employer who values our training programs and our employees, and it will aid even recruitment as a potential metric as well. So there's lots of those kind of side benefits. But yeah, I totally agree.
Helen, from your point of view, and this hopefully will bring us into impact and the kind of measures by which you define success at Maudsley. Can you talk us through what impact the VR training, particularly that you guys now do, is having on your learners?
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing. I think we're having some research done at the minute into like the reduction of like a de-escalate or escalation within our trust. I think like within the healthcare in general, and we're hoping that we'll see a clear like specifics from the trusts that we've worked with with our VR program, with our de-escalation model, a reduction in escalatory, like the need for escalatory incidents, basically. I think one of the things that we're seeing with our like champions model is that people are able to affect like real change then and there. So within South London and Maudsley, we had a situation where our learners were wanting to find out if there was like where specific things they could have conversations with around race inequality within the trust. Some things might be signposted already, but not everything is clear to people within the organisation, for example. So with our champions, they were like, how can we make sure that there's a safe place for staff to speak about incidents like this? Where is that place currently? We had a whole like a VR around bias and unconscious bias and stigma and discrimination. And from this, it's meant that staff have like gone to the trust and be able to sort of try and implement direct change so it affects that clinical area then and there, instead of being like, okay, we'll go to NHS England and we'll make a whole wider policy. Things can be changed then and there for staff in terms of a training, because that's the model we've developed, if that makes sense. So instead of waiting to implement change, or I guess with some trainings, you're the only person in your organisation that goes away and does the training by yourself, and then you come back and you implement it alone. Because we've developed this training in situ for teams, they can have the headsets in situ. They go away together and go, how can we make change right now in this area? And they affect it then and there. So it's been like instantaneous for teams. They've seen a benefit in general.
So sort of anecdotally, you must have quite a lot of examples of people coming out of possibly their first VR experience often, and as you say, being completely motivated to change behavior, change culture as a result. Any kind of favorite quotes or moments you've had over the years you've been delivering? Yeah,
I remember one of the quotes that always sticks with me is again on race inequality training. Somebody said that it was the first time that they'd been able to have a conversation safely and professionally that ended well about racism in the workplace ever, and actually affect real change from that. So for me, the training was there to sort of pinpoint behaviours, and sort of everybody was then able to go away and reflect on their unconscious bias. But for somebody to say, this is the first time in my life that I've actually ever been able to have a safe conversation and feel safe enough to talk about this, I think speaks to the training and the power that VR and XR can have in itself, in its immersiveness, but also the safe space that it can create for learners outside of the headsets to be able to come away and be like, we're dealing with super serious, high level, high pressure situations, but how can we work now together? What effect is it having on myself? And to be able to sort of make a change. Some people were saying, I can't believe I've been so blind. It's the same with like that bystander training experience where people feel uncomfortable and they wish they'd said something. With the VR or the XR, they get that in the headset. And then when they come out, it's that self-reflection almost, those moments of, wow, like I can't believe I haven't seen this in my day-to-day life. I feel really part of it. So that's been really powerful.
I just want to pick up on one of your points, Helen, that one of the things that misconceptions we hear with XR particularly is that you need to do these big open worlds. It needs to be kind of a lot of 3D modeling, a lot of asset creation, and actually these intimate experiences where you're maybe one-on-one with a video in 360, or you're having these quite small experiences that are really impactful. They don't have to be these enormous world building exercises like you see in some VR games, for example. You can do much more focused. So one of my bugbears in XR generally is you don't need to train someone how to kind of walk around and interact with objects, but you do need to train them how to do these very specific tasks or these processes. And so stripping out some of that extraneous stuff is actually a much better approach. So yeah, real kind of focus. Yeah, it's really nice to hear that that's been so effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And it actually sort of brings in a question that Samantha's asked on the chat. Thanks, Sam, for this one. So Sam says, when I think of VR, I think of virtual environments. As just alluded to, feedback from users here is great, but some people want to feel like they're out there in the real world. What options are there for real world content? And she's also interested in first person or point of view perspective. So I'm right in saying, I think, Helen, that a lot, if not all of your content in your program is real world 360 video type experiences.
Absolutely. Yeah, we use actors or real clinicians, real people, and film it like you would TV or film.
Good stuff. And from have you guys looked at any kind of embodiment style stuff? I mean, obviously that's something that some of the people on the webinar will be aware we're involved in. But I mean, maybe Ian, if you want to come in on kind of what we think that gear shift in immersiveness is when you get to embody a protagonist in a scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I think having done a lot of 360 video and experienced a lot, there's a lot of variance in the effect it has on you as a viewer. So Helen mentioned earlier about how important camera placement is, and how when you go into these immersive, particularly kind of immersive captures of the real environment, you are a protagonist in that story. You're someone who is actually there. You're stepping into someone else's shoes. So it's really important to treat the production of that content as if you are going on a journey and seeing the world through someone else's eyes, and actually kind of having first-hand experiences, which is can be sometimes there's actually value in doing a third-person perspective, and sort of you're observing someone doing something and you can kind of copy and then learn later. But actually, a lot of experiences, you want to put people into the position of, when you get into this situation, you're going to have a bit more familiarity with it, you're going to be a bit more confident with it, and you'll feel like you've already been there to a certain degree. So yeah, being able to kind of align that kind of point of view in 360 is really important, because it makes you feel like you're actually walking through that space.
That's something, Helen, presumably you're more than aligning with.
Absolutely. I think even like the little things in the 360 video, like everything from the set design, like everything has its purpose. I think I've spoken before, like it's almost like the Netflix show Adolescence. There was nowhere to hide. It was all in one shot, and that's what this is. But that mimics real life, really, when you only get one chance to do something in high pressured situations. But what VR gives you is the opportunity to do that again, or be in that environment again and again, and sort of at least feel comfortable or more confident in that. And either, like you said, in a first person perspective, really immerse yourself from a physical standpoint in the content and be able to interact or view it from someone's through your own eyes, or as a bystander. And sort of, I guess, even with content for the police, it's like situational awareness, stuff like suicide prevention, again, de-escalation, those things so powerful, both in the 360 first person and as a bystander. So there's so many opportunities there for stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Funnily enough, John, our producer, and I have done mental health first aid training, which obviously covers a lot around suicide prevention, and great 2-day course. Highly recommend Mental Health First Aid England's courses. But there were certain moments of that syllabus where I just felt it was crying out for, okay, now move us out of this training room and put us into a scenario where we can start to practice this. Because it's not until you're in that real world situation that you hope training kicks in. But do you know for sure it will? A comment from Kieran. Thank you, Kieran, in the chat as well. Again, touching on the powerful impact of 360-degree real world environments, but asking about interactivity. And you just mentioned interaction there, Helen. What I think a lot of people perhaps don't realize how interactive 360 video based VR can actually be. What does interaction look like in the context of a lot of your modules and work?
Yeah, so you can do like almost choose your own adventure style learning. Sort of, I always think about the Goosebump books from when I was a child. I used to read them and choose my own adventure for them. But you have like a question that would pop up, and it can be like, does the nurse do A or does the nurse do B? And then you'll follow the story based on that. Equally, you can have hotspots. I think a lot of people use them for like orientation videos, which can be quite immersive. And those are two that come to my mind off the top.
Great stuff. We've focused quite a bit on headset type experiences or headset deployment, but Gareth asked a question. Thank you, Gareth. Full disclosure, Gareth's my co-founder, but very nice of you to chip in. So you've mentioned free roam as a type of VR. Now, this is something that is quite recent in terms of what Juice are looking at and technologies to leverage and adopt. But can someone, maybe yourself, Ian, if that's okay, talk about free roam as a type of XR? What does it mean, and how can it be leveraged in contrast to those single user headset experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that this is a technology that's generally used in the kind of VR arcade world, where you kind of go to a space, you put on a headset, and you can interact with players in real time in a space. So the virtual world is mapped to the physical world. The headsets know where you are in that space. You can see your, in the VR arcade world, it'll be your kind of players or your teammates or your enemies. In the training space, it might be your colleagues who are doing a design review together. They're interacting with a 3D asset in the center of a room, and they can you work together to problem solve, or give feedback and give notes, or conduct a kind of a team activity like a process that you need to do, or an emergency procedure, for example, where the benefits of the free roam aspect is that anyone in the headset is networked with anyone else in a headset in that space, and the headsets scan the room so that you are in a protected environment. So and everyone's got that same shared space. So what it means is you can do is, if you've got a kit with headsets and a laptop and a router, you can drop that into any space. It will map to that space, and then multiple participants can enter a virtual room together and do interactive activities and training. So we see that as a really exciting development, because previously it was either more of a solo experience, or you were in a virtual space but you weren't really interacting in a shared physical environment. Now that's much more possible, so we're very excited to be exploring that.
Great stuff. Just aware of time and working towards a wrap up, I think. Feel free to throw more questions in, folks, if you have them. But just I think obviously it's the burning question for a lot of people is ROI, and particularly if they're in that situation where they're working on building up business cases and they're trying to get internal advocacy and sponsors and champions for adoption. Helen, from your perspective, I'm presuming, given how long you've been in the role now, that Maudsley, you've just never looked back. But yeah, what's it looked like from the point of view of measuring that ROI? And do you even have kind of stats or numbers that you tend to use?
I think we've been what we've been using is a month on month. We had our champion program, our pilot program, which was how we sort of launched our full proof of concept of everything we wanted to do with VR. And we some of the stats that came to mind is we had a goal. We wanted to train 100 staff, each champion to train 10 people in their areas. And it started very slow on month one, and we had, I think, 15 or 20 people take part in the training. But what was incredible, and what what gave us hope in that first month, was out of those 15 or 20 people, over 80% of those people came back voluntarily to do training, so that they wanted to come back and re-involve themselves in the scenarios, or go back into the same scenario, for example. And then month on, we monitored this across 5 months. And by the final month, we had, I think, 115 people take part in the training. And 97, I think, of those came back. So we were still seeing over, I think, 80% of people from each month on month. And it was growing month on month on month on month. And that was, I think, the appetite was obviously there to take part in the training. But the the want to come back and further learn. Like, I'm sure we've all been on e-learning where we've just skipped through as fast as we possibly can to get to the quiz, which is not the best way for training to be run. So the fact that people want to come back already is a huge win. And then the learning from that, we're seeing, I don't have any numbers on that just yet, but the learning we're seeing from people, the confidence that it's building in people, the change, even in our champions. Some of our champions have been able to go from non-clinical roles to clinical roles, and who never would have thought of that possible in the NHS, because the confidence in themselves in like, wow, I'm delivering this incredible training. Maybe I could do something else. Maybe I could do something more. And that, even that, like, is I think a return on investment for me and the NHS, because we're seeing like people want to stay in the organisation, they want to engage with the training beyond our even wildest dreams, to be honest.
That's fantastic. Such a great kind of case study, I suppose, for the wider industry and the wider XR in training kind of movement. I feel like the point you made there about when people tend to skip through some e-learning to get to the quiz at the end, you know, guilty as charged. And I think most of us, if we're honest, would say at some point or another we've tried to do that. But in and of itself, that's massively problematic. A, because the learner is not engaged enough in the first place to want to spend the time. They just want the quickest possible route to the end goal. And B, because let's face it, we've all probably done this as well, where we've actually ended up failing that final test, or at least getting a relatively low mark by virtue of the fact we've skipped the content. So it kind of gives a really negative and possibly quite a false view of the potential of that learner, or the standard of that person, if they'd been engaged in the training in the right way in the first place.
Yeah,
Ian,
I can add to this, because my 7-year-old son did exactly the same. He discovered that he could skip his spelling training by going through the transcript instead of watching all the videos. So it's not exclusive to adult learners. You know, I think it's something that if there's a way to you're not immersed in the content, you're not kind of focused and engaged, then you'll find ways to move through it, because it doesn't feel like I think we're just hardwired to find that kind of shortcut. Whereas every immersive experience I've done, where I'm actually in it, I'm living it, and I'm fully engaged. And then when I leave it, I remember it like it's a place that I've actually been, or a thing that I've actually done, and I almost recount it like an anecdote. It's like, oh, I remember when I went and did this thing. Obviously, I didn't move anywhere at all. I just put a headset on, or I went to a space. But so yeah, I think that there is an instinct for people to, if there's an option to skip through and take a shortcut, they might do it. Immersive actually gives you a reason not to, and a really compelling reason to focus on it.
Good stuff. Just finally, I think, and either or both of you, I'd welcome your view here. But I think, Ian, in particular, you've talked in the past about when you worked for a major broadcaster, and the form of training you received, or onboarding you received when joining that role. Which, you know, and I'm from a video background as well, so you know, it used to be fantastic if you were given video content, because at the time it felt like, oh, that they're investing in me, they're investing in video to help teach me. Those days have gone, right? Can you talk to your experience?
Yeah, it's because when I joined, there's a 2-week training window at the start. Your first 2 weeks when you join the corporation is 2 weeks of videos, essentially. They're very well produced videos because they're made by a major broadcaster. But even then, they weren't engaging. And it felt a bit like a punishment. I was kind of in training jail for 2 weeks, until I could really get my hands on, you know, doing projects and doing the things that I was really excited by. I think if there had been more interactive, and the technology was there, because it's where I discovered, you know, all of the kind of XR technologies that now I'm, you know, working with on a regular basis. But if that had been spread over time, it would be something that I can go back to and engage with again, then I definitely would have done that. But I don't think I watched a single one of those videos after beyond those 2 weeks, because it was felt like I'd done my time. I'd spent 2 weeks exclusively watching videos and not really being active. And you get bored of sitting in a chair and at your desk for 2 weeks. You want to be up and moving and doing something. So yeah, no, very much had that experience myself as a learner.
And Helen, just to give you the jumping off point for a final comment, really, how does it feel for you to be able to deliver training in the form that you now deliver it to your learners?
such a relief, to be honest. I think that, like, I'm very aware that there's, like I said, there's only one of me in the NHS. There's only one of me in my organisation, but I don't want to like be building something that if I leave doesn't outlive me, you know? It needs to not just be reliant on one person. So we've built this program where you have trainers, we have a training program to train trainers. So everybody knows, and we don't forget about the technical side as well as the teaching side, and even that training involves virtual reality. It's about how you blend all of those like aspects of everybody learns differently, so you're blending all the aspects of learning and excitement for people into a training program. I think building that has been such a rewarding experience, and seeing it do so well and make a difference to so many people, both the staff and then in turn the patients, has been incredible. So I'm so proud of like our team and what we've been able to achieve, because like you said before, the NHS isn't always easy to get things through with, but the buy-in that we've had and the even like the apprehension at the start has sort of faded away when they see the results, I think, and when they see it for themselves in action, putting people in a headset. I'm never afraid to just go, come and watch it for yourselves. I don't mind a skeptic, but I'll aim to prove you wrong.
Absolutely. Brilliant stuff. Great. I think obviously there's only so much we could ever have covered in the time we've had together, but it's been a wonderful conversation. I think we've covered a lot of ground. Helen, it strikes me that your experience at Maudsley can add a lot of value to others. So I'm sure there's probably some people on the call today, on the session, who would like to reach out or to follow you and connect with you. So what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, you can reach out on my work email, obviously. I can pop it in the chat, or contact Maudsley Learning, or you can reach out to yourselves, because I'm in contact with you guys all the time as well. Yeah, I'm on socials. I'm Helen Welsh. You can find me on socials if you'd like to reach out directly. But yeah.
Thank you so much. So I think all that remains really is to thank everyone for joining, particularly Helen and Ian. Thank you very much for taking part in the conversation. I've not spotted any further questions in the chat, so I'm presuming we've done a stellar job of covering as much ground as we intended to. So, but thank you everyone for watching and for listening and for contributing to the conversation. I hope it's been of value. We hope to do plenty more of these. So if anyone has any suggestions as to other subjects or topics or areas of XR they'd like covered, please feel free to drop us a line with that. And also, if you don't already follow Squeezing the Juice, the mainstream podcast channel, please do. You can find us on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple, and any other podcast platform. And there's now a number of past episodes that you could dip into for various areas of XR and expertise. We've had some cracking guests on there. So, okay, thank you ever so much, everyone. Thank you, Samantha, for all of your work in teeing up today, and we look forward to welcoming you all to a future episode of Squeezing the Juice, the live stream. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.